howdy, hey, awesome people of the internet. Wolfman47 here. So, in a sort of period of time where CGI is kind of starting to look like 2000 CGI again, and I'm just like, why? I thought it would be good to look at some of the worst examples of CGI. Now, as we know, CGI is a big thing. It's one of the big things that's used in big blockbusters, and it's sometimes also used in sort of smaller budget films. So excuse me. Yeah, it's evolved a great deal since Pixar released the first Toy Story film. It's definitely evolved to the point where it's now used in almost every single form of media. So films, TV shows, and all that. And obviously, video games is CGI anyway, and so forth. Usually, I think. Anyway, so today I'm going to be talking about 10 of the worst examples of CGI that I've seen in live action films specifically. And I'm only going to be focusing on films that were made on high budgets, so therefore they got no excuse really to have the CGI be as bad as it is. So because direct-to-home media stuff is obviously not gonna have the best CGI anyway because it's made on very small budgets, so you have to accept that. Also, TV shows, again, smaller budgets because it's TV shows, and obviously it's got multiple episodes spread across. So yeah, obviously, and yeah, and I'm not going to focus too much on films that were released while I was still growing up, because that's been described as a stone age for CGI. It was basically at its beginning, so obviously it's going to look pretty bad now, but back then it would have been quite revolutionary. So you have to understand that. So yeah, let's talk about some films that have the worst uses of CGI, and as usual, this will be a 10 video, so just 10 examples, not ranked or anything, just 10 random examples from things I've seen, just to try and make things a little different to all the other lists that you probably have seen with these. And so let's start with one that's really sort of made me question why it actually happened. Now, The Flash, as in the film Flash, was obviously meant to be that one film that would help the DC extended universe start to end, and sort of give us an ending that would see this universe sort of go, and we get the new universe that James Gunn's going to give us. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case at all, and it ended up being pretty bad. But one of the big things that made it really bad, bearing controversy around Ezra Miller aside, was the CGI. It's a CGI overkill. You got CGI babies that look weird. You got a CGI sort of globe thing that you see when Barry Allen's going back in time. And even when it gets to the point where the multiverse is happening, it's all these different deep fakes with cameos that weren't authorized, and all this other stuff as well. And it just made me wonder what's the problem with just using archive footage, because archive footage is genuine. It's not gonna anger fans if you use that, but just deep fakes, and yeah, it just looked really bad. And I forget what the budget is. I don't really like to go into money personally, because it's one of the few things I don't particularly like talking about. But it's a big budget film, so it should know better to have better CGI, or better yet, use practical effects where you can. Obviously, it's a Flash film, so of course CGI would have to be used. But yeah, it's really bad. So that's that. One that's a bit more subtle is in Tron Legacy. So Tron Legacy, as we all know, is a visual spectacle, and obviously it is going to use CGI no matter what, because it is a digital world, and it's trying to be a bit more realistic and so forth, and not too cheap looking compared to its predecessor, simply known as Tron. But of all the things that they did right, there is one thing that they did do wrong. You see, in the beginning of the film, we get a de-aged Jeff Bridges. Now, don't get me wrong, de-aging is fine and all if done right, but the way Jeff Bridges looks, it looks like he's a video game character when he's de-aged. And fortunately, thank God we did get Jeff Bridges in the age that he is in the film. And we do get another sort of de-aged Jeff Bridges in the form of Clue, which obviously, because it is a video game world, that's fine, but it can be a little bit distracting. So I'm only going to say the beginning of the film. That's like the most distracting because it's meant to be in the real world, so you don't really need video game characters in the real world. And in Tron, and in the actual universe of Tron, it's a video game character, so that's fine. So I'm not too off about that particular one, but it is still distracting all the same. Not as distracting as the CGI baby in Twilight Breaking Dawn Parts 1 and 2. Now, we've said, lots of us have said our piece about Twilight and how we feel it is compared to Harry Potter and all that stuff. And I'll be honest, I hate the films with a passion. I don't see the reason why they need to exist, and I'm actually glad that all the actors, or some of the actors, I don't know about everybody, actually did admitted later on that they acted really badly intentionally because they didn't like the whole source material and everything. Because let's be honest, Twilight is that one franchise that if you put it up to a big major franchise like Harry Potter, it's not going to do well, because Harry Potter, you can learn a lot of different life lessons. J.K. Rowling's thoughts and opinions about stuff aside, but with Twilight, it just feels like the only thing you really learn from that is how to get a relationship, which, fine and all, but yeah. And the CGI baby in Twilight is just creepy looking, and it's creepy looking more in that film than it was in The Flash, because you get to see the face, and it's just so weird. And whenever I bring up this particular thing, I do find it quite funny that a big blockbuster film like the Twilight Saga couldn't afford real babies, whereas a low budget thing like Doctor Who can afford real babies, bearing in mind that Doctor Who is a TV show that was produced by the BBC, who they themselves aren't doing too well as far as I know. And the fact that a TV show of all things, which is usually made on a smaller budget, is able to afford real babies, and a big budget film is not able to afford real babies, that's kind of embarrassing. Yeah, kind of embarrassing. So yeah, I'd say just get a real baby next time, if anything. But yeah, it is what it is. Now, with all the things to do with the Incredible Hulk, we've had a few films. We've had a TV show with She-Hulk, who just looks a bit odd. But I think we can all agree that when it comes to the worst CGI to use with Hulk, it's with the Ang Lee Hulk film. Now this came out sort of at the point where motion capture was starting to become popular, and at the time, obviously, the people that were making these films were not that keen on using CGI. And the problem I have with this film, obviously there is a lot of problems, but of all the problems I have with this film, it's just the look of Hulk. You see, Hulk is meant to be this big muscular character that is angry, fights and everything, whereas this Hulk just looks like a normal human being, just made bigger. And he looks so fake looking that it's just weird. Granted, this was released in the mid noughties, so I will give it some leeway. But the thing is, by the time of the mid noughties, CGI had got to a point where Davy Jones from Pirates of the Caribbean looked more realistic than the Hulk. So yeah, while I will say that She-Hulk does look bad, she doesn't quite compare to the Hulk from the Ang Lee film. So yeah, and I hope I am getting that information correct with Ang Lee. I'll check that in the edit later. So yeah. And now we move on to Disney remakes. I've talked a lot about Disney remakes already, so I'm not going to go into too much detail when I talk about it now. But of all the things that they did get wrong with the CGI on the CGI front, okay, realistic fish, realistic stuff aside, yeah, it doesn't look great and it looks unrecognizable. But nothing can quite compare to how emotionless the Lion King animals were. Like, you couldn't make it up. Like, all the animals, they just look so emotionless. They like show no emotion, like no and all that. It's just, why? Why are you not showing any emotion, guys? I mean, animals can emote. Yeah, they can definitely emote. So I don't get why Jon Favreau decided not to give them any emotions. And and also make out that they wanted this to be like a BBC nature documentary. I mean, it's The Lion King. Why? How can you possibly turn a film with talking animals in it into a nature documentary? It just doesn't work. I mean, I'm grateful that the Mufasa film that came after it, which for some reason I don't know why it came out, why we got it in the way it did, but anyway, I'm grateful that the Mufasa film at least did try to give the animals more emotions than the original film did. So I will give it that. It's still not a great film, but it is a slight improvement over this film. So yeah. So going back to subtle CGI that looks bad. Let's talk about Alien. Now, we've had a lot of Alien films over the years. Usually, and most of them have been made. We've had Ridley Scott is like the one that's kind of kept coming back to make the films, and obviously James Cameron has made his own version of Aliens, the form of Aliens, and also that guy called Joss Whedon, who we don't really talk about anymore because of the accusations he had when making Justice League. Made one that didn't quite work out, but anyway, enough about that. So, Alien Romulus, first Alien film to be released by 20th Century Studios under Disney's leadership. And it was a return, and was largely a return to practical effects, which is what made the first one really, really good. But of all the things that they did with on the CGI front, the one thing that they did kind of do which was just so odd looking was Ash. Now, Ash is one of the antagonists from the original film. He's, to spoiler, he's a droid, and in the film they tried to make him look like the original actor that played him, who I forget the name of, but he's sadly no longer with us, and he played old Bilbo Baggins in the Lord of the Rings films, born Middle-earth later. And in the film, just like with Clue and Jeff Bridges overall in Tron Legacy, he just looks weird looking and just looks like a video game character again. And in all honesty, if they really wanted to use him as an android, I think they could have just stuck with like I don't know, an android that's lost the face of the guy, or just his voice alone, just sort of guiding the crew. Or even better, because they did have a droid in this film as well, just actually have his consciousness upload into the other droid. It just doesn't look right, but yeah, it is what it is. So back to Marvel, specifically the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The start of Phase 5, we got Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which was meant to be the third Ant-Man film, and obviously the Ant-Man films have been funny, entertaining, and so forth, thanks in part to the cast and crew. And it's pretty much the same cast and crew this time around, albeit at least one of the people was recast for reasons. But anyway, so in this film, Ant-Man and the crew enter the quantum realm, where they meet the at the time main antagonist of the multiverse saga, Kang the Conqueror, who is now no longer the antagonist because of what happened with the actor Jonathan Majors. And when we get to the point where we get introduced to MODOK, and keep in mind MODOK is meant to be cartoonish because of his big face. So I was particularly interested to see how the MCU would depict him, but no, they instead of giving MODOK the proper MODOK that we would get, sort of a cartoon looking face. Okay, it is a cartoon looking face, but it looks like a face of a character we've seen in one of those films made by the guy that made the Spy Kids films, which are notoriously known for having really bad CGI. But it's very laughable and entertaining, so that's fine. But with Marvel Cinematic Universe, I mean, they should know better, because obviously the multiverse saga has been the weakest the MCU has ever been, with only like a few films actually looking into the multiverse, and the rest of them being just continuations of different characters, or introducing new characters into the mix and mythologies and so forth. And Quantumania, it's the MODOK just doesn't look good, and I think they should have given MODOK a better looking into. But obviously, they only can work with so much. So I will accept that MODOK can't be that. Basically, if they want to do MODOK, don't give him a realistic look. Give him a cartoon CGI look. Basically, is what I'm saying. So yeah. So back to the whole CGI overkill, and next is the Hobbit trilogy. Now, when Lord of the Rings came out, it was quite a revolutionary thing because no one knew anything about motion capture, and no one knew how it would work, because lots of people assumed that because of how long the books are and how epic the books are, that there'd be no way that Peter Jackson would be able to make the Lord of the Rings filmable. But he made them, and it turns out they did really well and won a lot of awards. So obviously later down the line, in order to keep the license to Middle Earth, Warner Brothers who now own New Line Cinema, were keen to create more films, or rather, Peter Jackson was keen to make more films and worked with Mr. Del Toro. I forget how to pronounce his first name. And initially, the plan was for Del Toro to direct the films, but he backed out, but still had a sort of producing and writing credit. So ultimately, it fell to Peter Jackson to once again direct the Hobbit films. And with the Hobbit being just the one book, it was very confusing to me why we had three very long films to make up the Hobbit book. But I guess it was just an attempt to expand upon different Middle Earth stuff, because at that point it was getting close to the point where the Tolkien estate were not keen on Peter Jackson making any more films, and they wanted to get the franchise, basically get the rights back. So when it came to making The Hobbit, Peter Jackson basically had access to a studio and wanted to make full use of CGI in the films. And what we did get was fine, and it still looked as Middle Earth as you can get, but there's just too much CGI being used. Like there's it's just an overkill basically, and it gets to the point where it's just so cartoonish and so childlike that it eventually isn't all that epic and fantastical like Peter Jackson wanted to make it. Don't get me wrong, the look of Smaug is really good. The look of the I forget what the creatures are called, but basically the look of Sauron's followers, it's got dark all of a sudden, look interesting. I guess it's just the establishing shots and all the other CGI stuff just looks too overkill, and yeah, it is what it is. It could have done a lot better, but it is what it is. So yeah. So back to de-aging. Next is Star Wars Rogue One. Now, I will say Rogue One is my favourite Star Wars film from Disney, because even though it's a film that no one really wanted or expected, it is a film that feels very much like a Star Wars film. It's kind of a sort of prologue for what would be Star Wars: A New Hope, and it gives us a sort of story about how this crew called Rogue One set out to get the plans from the Death Star and send it to the rebels somehow. And its saving grace to me was having Darth Vader in it, because to basically do Star Wars films under new leadership, not feature any of the iconic characters, would have been a bad move. And granted, the sequel trilogy did feature characters from the original trilogy, but Darth Vader is Darth Vader is Star Wars. He is the character that people like to see. He's the character that had 6 films all about his rise to becoming the Sith Lord and then back to being a Jedi. So yeah, it is what it is. But when it came to the whole idea of what to do about Peter Cushing's character, and also having young Leia into it, it begged the question how they would be able to do that, and the people behind the film eventually decided to bring in new actors, but put their faces on them and de-age them as well. And to be honest, they weren't too distracting to begin with for me, but after a few rewatches, I do kind of get that, yeah, they do look like video game characters. And bear in mind that Star Wars is not a video game, even though it's had lots of video games. It's not a thing that's set in a video game. It is set in a galaxy far, far away. So yeah, it is distracting now, but not as distracting as it. But it is distracting now. But when I first watched it, it wasn't as distracting. But I get it. So yeah. And finally, a bit of a random one, this one, but let's talk about Snakes on a Plane. Now, Snakes on a Plane is a silly film. It's obviously a film that is quite literally the name that you get. And anybody that thinks that they can be clever and sort of explain the film to you, it's like, no, you don't need to explain it. It's basically, the title is basically that. It's Snakes on a Plane, quite literally. But anyway, so instead of using real snakes, and which to be honest I think was probably a good move anyway, because while there are some snakes that are pretty harmless and would not ever kill anyone, there are definitely a lot of snakes out there that will kill people, a lot, such as the rattlesnake and so forth. But I did kind of feel that there was a bit too many CGI snakes in the film. Granted, this film was probably made on a slightly lower budget than most big blockbuster films, but this is a film with I'll start again. This is a film with Samuel L. Jackson. This is a guy who takes no nonsense, will swear because he can, and yeah, he is basically an actor that I hugely respect, because he will take no nonsense for anyone, no matter what. And it sort of demonstrates in the characters they plays in the films that they plays characters in. He's a no-nonsense person, and any film I see him in, no matter how bad it is, it's really good. So yeah, CGI snakes. It's a funny, silly thing. It is definitely a worse example, but definitely an entertaining one for sure. So yeah, and that's 10 examples of the worst CGI I've ever seen. It goes without saying that we now live in a time where we should really be getting films that have good CGI, and shouldn't really waste their money on too much stuff. Give us good CGI, for God's sake, because gone are the days where we got things like Pirates of the Caribbean where CGI was really, really good and so forth. It's just, we just want good films with good effects, good practical effects, good visual effects, and just don't use too much CGI, because if you use too much CGI, it's gonna make the film, and the CGI itself looks not too realistic, it's gonna make the film age quite rapidly. And when a film ages quite rapidly, so people will still see the film, but they'll probably see it just to play a drinking game, just to see how bad it really is. So yeah, that's basically my 10 examples of worst CGI. Obviously, if you've got examples of your own, tell them in the comments below. Love to hear what you think, and I will always react and respond to comments. Just want to make that clear, because I know there's lots of YouTubers out there that will make these videos, but they hardly ever react or comment, or react to comments and so forth. But I personally will. So yeah. But anyway, thanks so much for watching, and like, share, comment, and subscribe if you can, please. Those of you new to the channel, I basically do vlogs like this where I talk about all sorts of different things. So obviously today I've done a top 10, well, not a top 10, a 10 sort of random things on a particular topic. I don't really like doing ranking lists, because I just don't see the point. So yeah, and in addition to that, I also do vlogs where I'm ranting about life, doing hauls, doing reviews, talking about different characters, different universes, multiverses specifically. Exploring films and so forth in a different genre, looking at what if scenarios, and other things as well. And if you're a gamer, I game as well, so I do regular gameplay videos where you don't hear me talk or anything, it's just straight up gameplay with some editing for good measure, and also let's play videos where you get to see me talk and then basically add commentary and try and have a laugh, because that's what let's plays are meant to be, trying to have a laugh and so forth. So yeah. And I do other stuff as well, but specifically those things. See you in the next one. Peace to you all. And remember, if you have a big budget, then use the budget well and don't waste it on cheap-ass CGI, because it's embarrassing. So yeah, all right, toodles.
There's a